Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. I hope you enjoy. Story number 1. Lesson Plans, written by Katani77. Settle down, class, Instructor Voss muttered, while setting down his datapad and the old worn satchel he carried with him everywhere. The usual lesson plan has been cancelled by the administration. We have a lot of information to cover, so I'll make this short. He sat back in his chair in the front of the class. The fresh faces of the military academy settled into attention. We have to change course, as it were, and discuss the Terrans today given the recent news. He tapped a few squares on his datapad with his furred fingers. Does anyone here know much about them? One of the Rylians at the back raised a tentacle. Yes, Cadet Gomer.
Class 12 Omega Deathworlder, evolved from primates as persistence hunter-gatherers. Hyper-violent, but strong sense of honor and loyalty to familial or tribal unit. Not particularly xenophobic. Extraordinary abilities to adapt and improve technology, due to tool usage being the reason they were able to become the apex of their planet. Gomez translated back out, in the usual monotonousness of his species. Damned Rylian photographic memory. The teacher mumbled. So, you read the report on them, great, Cadet. But, and be sure I mean the critical thinking sense, what does it all mean? The teacher asked, tapping a few more squares on his datapad. It means it's lucky they're on our side.
Cadet Rosen chattered in a galactic basic, his mandibles causing the words to have a halted lilt to them. Yes, that is true. Not quite what I had in mind, though. I'll tell you. He tapped his datapad again, and the room's view screen switched to a feed of news recording coming from the outer rim. On the screens, massive warships were seen firing down at the planet, turning a small patch of surface to molten rock. This happened yesterday. Are, those Terran warships? One cadet asked softly. No, they are Hyrian. That is, the human colony world. The Hyrians are new to the neighborhood but considered technologically superior to 95% of the Galactic Federation and are hyper-aggressive. The teacher changed the view of the Terran News Network. The Terran president could be seen standing at a podium. The unprovoked attack on the Agro colony of Series 2 will not go unpunished. It is with a heavy but determined heart I will formally declare war on the Hyrian Empire. The president was drowned out by applause. Well, the Hyrians are screwed, Cadet Rosen quipped. This is classified information, but the human stealth attack fleets have already glassed all but the Hyrian homeworld, and that has been left pretty much in ruins. Apparently, they were attempting to negotiate with the Hyrians after intercepted chatter indicated that the Hyrians wanted to shove their muscle around the galaxy. They saw the Terrans as being mostly merchants and traders with an easy target, not knowing that they have the largest, most well-armed military in the galaxy, or that the vast majority of it runs completely in stealth mode. But that address was only a few hours ago. Cadet Gomez spoke. Correct. The Terrans glassed 20 colonies and 6 capital worlds in less than an hour. A coordinated attack of a caliber never seen in the history of the galaxy. The humans knew war was coming with the Hyrians eventually, and had fleets already hiding in most of the Hyrian systems. Then the response was to the destruction of a single colony with only a few dozen maintenance workers was so, Boss's voice trailed off. The class fell deathly silent. Which is the focus of today's lesson. All of it means for the next week we'll be learning, at the Galactic Federation Council's request, all of the known ways to not piss off the Terrans. End of story. Story number 2. Like Sharks, written by In Babylon They Wept. Sip was a brilliant engineer, a visionary, but even he struggled to comprehend the scale of the wreckage in front of him. A single human ship. One. It had taken 3 of their 8 supercarriers and an amazing amount of luck to take it down. Tip to tail, it was more than 15 kilometers long. The crew, space, barely held 5 pilots. The rest was just engine. He'd been given as much background as the council itself had. He'd seen the battle footage. This abomination was bigger than their largest station, but it had still danced around the battlefield with all the grace of dust in the wind. If its weapon systems were fully operational, there would be no one left to speak of it. The fact that it had done all of this with nothing but short-range PDC was terrifying. In ship-to-ship combat, it was like chasing down a sniper just to gut him with a knife. Then repeating it 3 times in a row. Intellectually, he knew the ship was dead. People had already scoured the main cabin, pulled all the frozen corpses out. He knew that, but deep down, he couldn't truly believe it. There was a persistent hum that he could still hear emanating out of the craft. That muffled roar of the gravitational anomaly trapped in the engine. He'd been told that he'd be able to hear it the entire time he was within 7 light seconds of the wreck, even in pure vacuum. It wasn't air making the hum, it was space-time itself rippling as a cage beast plucked away from the inside its goal. He shuddered, imagining those ripples traveling out to pluck away at his ear. That's not how they've been doing it, you know. He turned around to look at the man who'd spoken. Alge. He was one of the few survivors of the battle. Everyone in the carrier was dead, and fewer than half of the people left, stranded in their fighters, made it long enough for the rescue craft to arrive. Scrip raised an eyebrow. Doing what? Getting around our lines. We've been blocking off all the hyperspace lanes between wormholes, patrolling the hyperspace lanes between wormholes, patrolling the infrastructure. We thought that they were sneaking around us somehow. Alf nodded towards the wreck. No sneaking, just, moving. They don't rip their way through the void like we do. They, swim in it. Scrip shrugged mutely. He knew that much had already been given to him. The knowledge was changing the upper brass's tactics, but not by much. It was impossible to guard choke points anymore. There weren't any. The humans had designed their ships so that they could attack at any time, in any place, and leave without anyone knowing where they went. They'd built their ships like sharks, and even looking at it, even having it in front of him, he didn't think that he'd be able to figure out how to defend against them. He spoke abruptly, clearing the thick silence from the air. You know we're fecked, right? Alge laughed and laughed and laughed. When the mirth subsided, he put a warm hand on Scrip's shoulder. But it's good to hear it from you too. End of story. Story number 3. The Icarus Incursion, written by Flaming Raven. They called it Asphodel. Typical Terrans. Always recycling dead languages. It was an agri-world. Its sole purpose was to produce food. It was ours. Ours! By all rights, we should have turned it to slag before the Terrans could claim it. But no. The moment the Terrans received their designated territory from the Galactic Senate, we couldn't touch it without kickstarting a war. But we were the Denoki, and unseen blades of Walner, the god of death. Surely, we could eviscerate Asphodel before any assistance would arrive. We cut off all communication coming from the planet and descended upon its dark side, the night sky, masking our sleek, reflective ships. We were quick, we were silent, and we were merciless. After our work in the capital city of Asphodel, we began our ascent back into the void. As we were congratulating each other for a job well done, one of our ships detonated, with the void of space carrying no sound. The flash of light and their transmission cutting off was our only warning. Immediately, we went to battle stations, arming our energy weapons and scanning for any and all threats. One of our techs extrapolated the point of origin for the projectile. It was coming from, the star. A transmission ping lit up our communications. Our captain ordered it to be answered. Up on screen was a female Terran. She looked old for her species, grey hair and a few wrinkles in the skin around her eyes. Her eyes, they were the color of ice, and they looked as if they were trying to freeze us. So you're the reason that the all clear stopped transmitting, she stated blankly.
You Denoki are even uglier over hollow, but at least the smell isn't present for this conversation. The captain of the ship next to us must have been on the call as well, because he began to speak. The moment his voice started to enter his microphone, the Terran pointed a finger at his ship with a thumb straight up. "You dare!" the captain let out before the Terran interrupted him. "Bang!" she said coldly, and a flash of light illuminated her face for a moment. Then a massive spike of depleted uranium tore through the captain's ship, causing instant depressurization and multiple minor explosions throughout the ship before the ship's frame couldn't take the strain and blew apart. Silence reigned over the intership comm like a monarch. The Terran broke the silence. "I am Vice Admiral Helen Peterson. You are fleeing one of my people's planets after jamming their communications for hours, and your people have a certain reputation for hate crimes against Terrans," the now named Vice Admiral stated. Immediately, the 3 remaining ships were thrown into a panic, trying to extrapolate a new course and possible evasive maneuvers. All the while, Helen watched, boredom present on her face. "Let me be clear," the Admiral said, her voice cutting through the noise. "There is no possibility of escape. Even if you do go FTL, this is an act of war. If your official military uniforms are any indication, yes, I'm talking about you, engineers and techs scurrying about thinking that you're out of frame," said serviceman, froze in place. "I'm going to assume that you thought that we'd send out an emergency broadcast whenever we're in trouble. I mean, so many other races do the same. Yourselves included," she said, now pacing like a caged predator. The camera broadcasting her followed her as she moved. "We Terrans, however, prefer a much different approach. You see, we have a channel entirely dedicated to saying we are okay over and over. That way, the moment that stops, we know something's wrong. It's tied to a geothermal plant, so power outages are rare," she stated. She turned to look back at the camera. Our Captain Zulman, shivered. "So, do you want to go down fighting or running?" Vice Admiral Peterson inquired, holding up her hand and extending her index finger. Bang! End of story. I would just quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and patrons. Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barkey, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Lord Azrakul, and Arcadian.